Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far as Censor confirms his #1 spot on the rank play ladders here in Vanguard. Lots of questions have been raised as to whether these trials these teams are trying out are actually a good idea. Are they doing more harm than good, especially with what Methods has to say? Very much intrigued your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you are new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Really up to the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. Big discussions last night on Censor getting the #1 spot because we've seen this ladder for the last several days at this point, and they were kind of effectively the #1 guy on the ladder was a guy called Chain. He was way above the rest of the pack. So, Doug, as you can see right here, this is kind of early last night, 5,900 SR, right behind Joe DeCease for #2. But there was actually another #1 guy called Chain, who had about 6,900, almost 7,000 SR. Now, he got a lot of that SR from playing with the #2 player, like the Perplex guy or whatever, who then got outed as hacking. So, there's been some questions as to whether the Chain guy was hacking. There were some suspect clips, but, you know, there's so many suspect clips. I think everyone kind of thought, okay, this guy's probably not hacking, he's probably okay, probably legit, but still, he did gain a lot of SR by playing with a hacker, so it was a question whether that was legitimate SR or not. Now, seemingly, they've decided to, effectively, initially when people saw this, they thought, okay, wow, he's been banned, he's been, you know, he's hacking, he's gone for the ladder, he must have been banned. Turns out that wasn't fully the case, but, you know, Chain, who was sitting at first place, not the same as the kind of immigrant Chain, I believe, Northern Irish player, who was on the Singularity squad a couple of years ago, not really sure what he's doing this year, but was a great player a couple of years ago in the Challenger size. This is a different Chain to that, but he was ahead by over 1,000 SR and has now been entirely removed from the top 250. So he lost an awful lot of score right here. That puts Censor in a position to capitalize. Well, as Crone comes out and says, there's been a development. Chain is still sitting on 6,990 SR. His account was not banned. So he comes out and says, yeah, look, my account's not bad. I've still got the same SR. But I believe this is what can happen, like when they do corrections, is that it corrects on the leaderboards and like on their kind of internal database. But from their perspective, from like the first person POV from Chain, it actually didn't change until he went on to play a game. I'm pretty sure he played one match and then he got demoted, as we'll see in a second here. But this also from Matt Sconce from Treg I thought was kind of interesting. Shine says on the Reddit, you know, even if he wasn't cheating, he earned a boatload of SR from playing with hackers. Therefore, like, you know, is that SR really legit? Matt Sconce agrees that's what they decided to do as a result. So he plays one game, he loses like 1,300 SR, goes down to 5,700 or something. So he does come back onto the ladder, but you know, behind where he was, right? So they kind of docked into the point where he's behind Doug Censor, Martin Jimbo, and around about that ballpark. So maybe they looked into how many games he played with the Perplex guy or whatever, and just said, look, the SR you gained in those games wasn't really legit. Therefore, you know, we're just going to dock you down to a kind of level playing field. Because in fairness, it was kind of ridiculous that the #1 guy had like 1,000 more SR than the rest. I was kind of hoping that Doug Censor Martin could make the comeback and make it all the way up there. But you know, I was thinking it was a pretty hard task, a pretty difficult task to overhaul this guy. But you know, he's dropped down. I guess he can start the grind again from where he is here. But you know, here we go from Doug Censor Martin. Then gets on the grind last night, top 2, and I'm not second. So after all the grind of the last few weeks, Doug Censor Martin, #1 at ranked play leaderboard leader player in the world. Absolutely phenomenal. Happy for Doug, like 6,105 skill rating right now. So yeah, Doug's been on the grind. You'd love to see it. Now, you know, look, is this going to help him get put onto the starting roster of the Boston Breach? Unlikely to be the case, but I thought it was still cool regardless. Like, it's good to see the grind paying off at least in one aspect of his gameplay. And I'm pretty sure along the way to getting #1, he was playing 0 right here, like, you know, 0 dropped like 9 kills. Doug was on the other team. But yeah, obviously Doug's been on the grind, so you'd love to see it. But you know, still, I'm sure he's going to be thinking with all these roster trials going on right now, like, okay, can Boston just start getting some bad results? Maybe they'll put me in for the trials. I don't really know. Of course, his relationship with, I think it was Zed, there was some drama at the start of Black Ops Cold War where they were teaming together, and then they kind of, well, had a falling out effectively. So I wonder what his coach relationship really is there between Censor and Zed, to be honest, and whether there's a possibility that Doug ever gets into the starting team in the league. Maybe if expansion comes through, there's more of an opportunity. But let's talk about this then. So a few days ago, the roster trials officially get confirmed by the Minnesota Rokkr as to what they're planning to do. And everyone's question has been, is this actually a good idea? Is it going to give you more information about your players, especially the way that the New York subliners are doing it? Because it seems like Rokkr, to me, Attach has pretty much been the mainstay for the team. Everyone else, they're kind of swapping around, seeing how it goes, trying out Havoc, maybe trying out Clayster we saw earlier today. There's some possibilities there. The subliners, seemingly, their first set of scrims, they played without Hydra. Maybe the idea there is also played without Crimsix. Maybe the idea being, let's just see how the team plays. Do we need Hydra to be good? Like, you know, what is his communication like actually without Hydra? Are the comms a bit better? All these type of ideas. The problem is, could it potentially mess up team chemistry? And also, could it give you inaccurate information and data, effectively, on how good the team actually is? Because some have been implying that if you're playing a team, a trial team, that you think is actually pretty bad, or at least on paper, doesn't have the potential, is there an incentive for the team you're scrimming against to actually just effectively throw the scrim, to make it look like the other team is particularly good, and therefore they will keep their starting roster? This has been a big discussion the last few days, and therefore Zuma seems to believe that actually these trials are maybe more harmful than good, because they might affect the team culture, and the information you get from them might not actually be particularly valid. Because let's say you have a really good scrim set, you're like 6-0 a team, or 8-0 them or whatever. I guess how many maps even are there in this game? I guess 7-0 now with the Berlin control coming into play, at least through the hard points and the controls. And let's say you just dominate some squad that's pretty good, you might think, okay, wow, this General, Kismet, like Neptune and Paul X team is really good. We just dominated these guys. Let's keep this roster going forward. We don't need to bring Hydra back, whatever. Whereas the reality is that the other team you're playing against might be effectively deliberately throwing the scrim. Methods actually was the one who first kind of said this, was like, look, if I'm playing against a team that I think is bad, that my team is a better team on paper than, we want to make them look good. We don't want them to bring Hydra back into the team if that was the case, right? We want to show, look, yeah, this is the team you want to go for, lads. Therefore, Methods turns his, sensitivity up to 14-14, effectively just throws the scrim, makes it look good for the other team, and therefore, they will then select that roster, or they'll be internally conflicted as to what team was actually better. And maybe then that lineup of 4 has a much better time in scrims, the vibes are much higher because they're beating a team pretty comfortably, and actually it's all kind of artificial. And Aix actually says, the Methods idea is pretty much bang on the money. They actually did this back in the day. Pretty sure he says in World War II, there was a team they played against, there was they thought was pretty bad. They effectively deliberately just threw the scrim, and therefore that team would be better, so they would then get the better of them later in the year. So interesting stuff, to be honest. And also kind of Methods also goes on to say that if he was in these roster trials, Aix seems to be pretty convinced it's not a good idea, but Methods is like, look, I would just be playing for kills every single time. The kind of stats you get from these are artificial.
Scrim any of these trialing teams, and I think it's a roster. I'm a competitor. I'm changing my sense to 14-14, and I'm getting pissed on all day. So New York roster is gonna piss.
I'm doing the same thing.
New York roster is gonna piss on me all day.
I think it was World War II, bro. We intentionally lost every single map in a scrim to a team who was trying a new roster.
What do you expect them to do, though?
I remember.
Every single map.
That's so
bro.
Why?
That's a 200 IQ play. It's your competition.
Making a horrible move. Yes, please, yes, turn on me. I'm literally getting and getting off at the end of the day and celebrating with my team. I'm celebrating. Bro, those guys think they're so smart. They just won every map. 100-point club to every map. They're gonna pick up those players. Oh my God, they are.
This is what pissed me off, right? Because with lazy, ban impact, calm down. All right, calm down. Listen, let's switch the topic now because we're going in circles here. I didn't even get to put my thoughts. My only thoughts, and the only thing I'll say is I think it's a little weird for the team culture side of things. I think throwing everybody in scrims and saying, hey, go out there and we're going to make a roster based on what we see in trials is going to cause a lot of, what's the term I'm looking for?
Chalking your team.
It's going to cause a lot of issues between the people. It's going to cause a lot of issues. I just feel like people are going to be competing rather than trying to get better.
Oh, I'd be Killhorn.
Right, and it's going to change. It's going to change the mindset of a lot of these players, and that's my personal opinion on it. That's the only reason why I was a little iffy on it. But to be fair, to argue the other side, I do agree that you can learn things from trials. You can, but I wouldn't look at these trials like it's the smartest thing ever. I personally think it might be doing more harm than good.
So what do you guys think about this, right? There's a few different ways to look at this. I do wonder whether this is, it's got to be an implication, right? If Method is thinking about it and if Aix is saying he's done it, it's got to be a thought process that goes through the other team. So I think it's just going to be difficult if you are, of course, if you are a good coach, you can probably tell when the other team is going super hard, when they're not. Just get an idea. But still, if you go into a scrim set and get absolutely bodied by Atlanta FaZe with your team before that you've just trialed out for this particular scrim set, it's less likely you're going to continue with that team than if you 7-0 a team that maybe weren't really trying too hard. Now, of course, the other argument is that Method is making that look, these players effectively in the trials themselves, not necessarily on the team they're playing against, but the players in the trials have an incentive to just play for kills, right? To actually look better on the scoreboard than they are in reality. We've seen Doctor talk about this, the likes of Awakening, right? So far this season, there was one game I think on maybe it was a Tuscan hardpoint, I think, where he went 37-13 for the loss or something outrageous. Which, people were looking at that thinking, hang on a second, lads. There's no way you're going triple positive and losing the game. Surely you're doing something wrong on the map, which I think is probably a fair assessment. But at the same time, if there's certain situations where maybe you just play a little bit for the stats more than you would otherwise, let's say you're Clayster, for example, subbing in for the subliners and Crimsix is out of there, you might want to think, okay, hang on a second, let's just make sure I get at least a 1k deal. Let's make sure I don't drop a 0.7. Let's just play it in such a way, even if I maybe lose the map or whatever. So it's always kind of, look, when those considerations are even being had, it raises the question in the coach's mind, in the management of the team's mind, that they have to really be on their game, right? Because there are incentives that are misaligned here in terms of which players are going to get a go. Now, I'm not necessarily saying the trial idea is completely terrible, but I think, Zuma probably has a point where it could work out more negatively than it does positively, because at the end of the day, you're trialing different players, you're messing with the team culture, and even if some of the players that were trials now go out of the team again, some other ones come back, there might be some kind of pent-up frustration, resentment from some of these guys that they even got dropped in the first place, so it just creates more complications than necessarily it fixes. Of course, in theory, it should help you get a better roster, but all these other complications of other teams not trying and, playing for kills on your own team definitely makes it a very difficult game to actually decide what team is the best, and you don't have all that much time to figure it out, because these teams have to turn around their success very quickly indeed, and that was the thing really with the subliners. People were very surprised that Kismet was coming into that team, maybe it wasn't a massive surprise, but just the way they did it. Hydra was gone, Kismet in, apparently General in for Crimsix as well in that particular scrim set. Look, if I'm seeing a team, let's say I'm a Boston Breach and I'm Methods, and I'm seeing a team of Kismet, General, Neptune and Paul X or something, I'm not scared about that team. In the long run, I'm thinking, look, let's say their comms are spectacular. They're the best coordination and chemistry and teamwork you've ever seen in Call of Duty history. That team, I still don't think they have the raw power to get above a top 6, top 4 on a consistent basis. So if I'm a Boston Breach, I'm not really too concerned. If I can make that team look great to Darila and the coaching staff, I'm probably going to try and do it. But they're certainly going to have to make some correct decisions, because these are the CDL point standings. The top 5 are probably safe already for the World Championship. Los Angeles Guerrillas with their victory, probably that cements them. And of course, the other ones are all above them anyway. Top 6 and below, that's where it gets very suspect. Los Angeles Thieves, Mutineers, Surge, all on only 70 points. Then we've got the bottom 4 that right now aren't making champs. I think it's basically chalked for the Paris Legion again. But all the other teams, out of these 6, 3 teams will go to champs, 3 teams shall not, which is honestly very challenging for them, especially because subliners right here at 40 points, they're quite a way off, at Surge in 70, getting out of effectively the relegation zone as it would be. So they're going to have to make some good decisions, as are the Minnesota Rokkr right above them. They don't have all that long to make sure that they're actually making some good calls right here. And of course, again, May the 5th through the 8th, they're going to have to determine how long they do these trials for, because maybe a few more days, of course, only the 20th of April right now, so they have some time to turn it around, but they've got to be confident as to what their roster is going to be, send them to the Pro-Am, and if it doesn't go well, what do you do before the Major 3 qualifiers start? So it's an interesting test already for some of these teams as to how things are actually going to look for them. This just to mention real quick actually as well, because it seems like the Guard, or Los Angeles Guerrillas, the Cronky Esports Entertainment Group or whatever, they've got this theatre, YouTube Theatre I guess they're calling it or whatever. It has 6,000 spectators. Really cool, they did the Rocket League Major thing here quite recently. Now, who knows if this is going to be a great major event for Call of Duty. Hopefully it would be. It does look a pretty fantastic venue. Maybe, maybe they're going to make a pitch to the CDL next season to say, look, Los Angeles Guerrillas, we want to host our own major, as of course 4 other teams have done so far this year. And just to finish up with this as we close down the video, the top 15 longest times since winning the last championship. We can see Clay at the bottom here, 597 days, right there with Crimsix. The longest one is actually 0, right? Having won the Stage 1 playoffs back in Infinite Warfare on Spice. I guess of still competing players. I'm pretty sure, there's another way to look at this, right? In terms of players that, since when they started competing, what is their streak without a championship victory? But this is a more interesting stat to me personally. Which players who have competed, who won a championship and are still competing, what's the differential there between some of these days? And to me, if you look at the entire Los Angeles Thieves team, we've got Kenny, we've got Octane, we've got Envoy, I guess Drazah isn't here, but Kenny and Octane both over 1,000 days now. Slasher was also just over 1,000 days before, I'm pretty sure it was probably the same actually as Kenny and Octane before they're winning the most recent event, so he got back to 0. Gunless even at 800 days, we've got all these other players here, and even the Awakening and Sky's victories, I guess, online in Modern Warfare, do they really count? I suppose that's a question mark you guys might have, but yeah, TJ at the top. I remember Clayster's 1,400 day win streak was discussed an awful lot throughout, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, World War 2, but since then we've actually got players almost getting up to that point once again. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hitting the like button tells you YouTube gods this is a good video. I'd also like you should see it as well, and hope grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.